What's happening? Thanks for joining me as always. It is much appreciated on this Autopsy Monday. We will get to what happened yesterday in San Francisco, but of course, help us out as we begin here by doing a couple of things. You can give us that thumbs up as you watch on YouTube. All the thumbs up, all the likes helps us beat that algorithm. So give us that like, throw a comment in there as well. What are you frustrated by the most when you watch this football team right now? What frustrates you the most watching the Patriots? Throw a comment in. And also don't forget to subscribe. We had a big subscriber jump over the weekend as we continue to march towards 4,500 subscribers. I appreciate every single one of you. So the Patriots, I would say, were mostly dominated in San Francisco yesterday. And the final score, the result, wasn't a huge surprise. When we discussed this game last Friday, my prediction going in was 24-13 Niners. Now, when we had that conversation on Friday, we weren't sure George Kittle was going to play. We weren't sure if Deebo Samuel was going to play. There was some talk about Trent Williams maybe not playing as well. All three of those guys played yesterday. And so before the game yesterday, I tweeted, if you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at Nick C Radio. Again, at Nick C Radio. I tweeted yesterday before the game, I was sticking with my prediction, 24-13, but I would not be surprised if San Francisco could end up with 30 points. Would not be surprised if they could get to 30. And that's precisely what happened. They got to that 30-point mark. So 24-13, 30-13 is what it is. I'm 3-1 against the spread because, of course, the 49ers, they covered yesterday. And when you look at this season big picture, just looking at the wins and losses, not a lot of surprises, right? I had them at 1-3. I think a lot of people had them at 1-3, if not 0-4. You looked at the four matchups to start this season, and it would have surprised absolutely nobody if you walked away at 1-3. So that's where they are. They're at 1-3. But just because we thought this team would be 1-3 doesn't mean everything has gone according to plan. That's not the way it works all the time, right? There are lots of things that need to be fixed with this football team. I think all of us watching this team can see a lot needs to be fixed. So I'm going to break down what frustrated me the most, irritated me throughout the game yesterday, and why we could be confident or not confident. Some of these things, all of these things will change as the season goes on. So let's start here. Let's start offensively because it was another bleep show from the offense yesterday. And I'm going to talk about the offensive line, but we've spent so much time talking about the offensive line. I think we need to start talking more about Alex Van Pelt. Before the season kicked off and throughout this offseason, I was fair to everybody in this process. I said I was going to see how things played out. Everybody, before they do a job, deserves the benefit of the doubt. And until they prove they can't do the job, they get that benefit of the doubt. But don't get it twisted. As I said throughout the offseason, if things don't go well, if this team is outcoached and outplayed, we will look back and we will say, this is what went wrong. This is how it went wrong. And this is who's to blame. So I am willing to give Alex Van Pelt and Gerod Mayo and DeMarcus Covington time to figure things out. I expected a learning curve. I did not think they were going to be a polished coaching staff when they took over. But now we're through the first month of the season. So now we start to really look at what's being done. Because eventually here in the next few weeks, they have to get better. The coaches have to get better. Alex Van Pelt has to get better. And so I give him the benefit of the doubt before this whole season began. As the season goes, as I've said from the very beginning, I criticize when criticism is deserved. I give credit when credit is deserved. We don't know anything about this staff. We knew nothing about this staff as they walked in because Van Pelt hadn't been an offensive coordinator since 2009. DeMarcus Covington never called the defensive play at the NFL level. Gerod Mayo had never been a coordinator, let alone a head coach. But now we're a month in. And now we start to look at what is not being done and what is being done. So let's start with Alex Van Pelt because I thought yesterday he stunk. I thought Van Pelt stunk during yesterday's game. And there are a couple of key things that we can point out. Number one, the 4th and 1 play call when you decide to go with a jumbo offensive line to the right side. You put Caden Wallace out there on the right side, and you say to yourself, we're going to overload the right side with big offensive linemen. It's a fourth and short situation. What do? They overload the right side, but they end up running with Stevenson behind their tight ends and a wide receiver. Predictably, the play doesn't work. San Francisco is loaded up. Stevenson gets stopped. That's it. Drive over. And it really makes no sense. And Greg Olsen, he pointed this out during the game. It makes no sense. If you're overloading the right side, you're going big on the right side, run behind the big boys. Play physical football. That is supposed to be the identity of this football team. Play physically. Run the ball to the right behind the offensive lineman. You got an extra lineman out there for a reason. Don't overthink it. And Van Pelt runs to the left, and you get nothing out of it. Another thing, and this was inexcusable. Absolutely freaking inexcusable during the game yesterday. And it's inexcusable beyond what we saw, with what was going on with AVP choosing that run play, because it was a consistent mistake by AVP. We talked on Friday, and we said what? You cannot leave your left tackle going one-on-one against Nick Bosa. That would be an absolute irresponsible coaching decision. And what did we see? Your fourth-string left tackle who's been on the practice squad, Demontre Jacobs, who I don't know how many people even know who he is, that don't write about this football team on a daily basis, that don't do podcasts like I do, that don't do radio shows. And I'm sure some radio hosts don't even know who Trey Jacobs is. And that's not a shot at the radio hosts. It's just a fact that this is your fourth string left tackle. And for some reason that is unknown, Alex Van Pelt walked into that game and thought that you could go one-on-one Jacobs versus Bosa. This is NFL 101 type stuff. You don't have to be an offensive coordinator for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, even 5 years to realize leaving a fourth-string left tackle one-on-one against one of the best pass rushers in football was a mistake. But yet, there it was yesterday, and we're watching this play out, and for some reason, Bosa is out there one-on-one against Jacobs. Here's a next-gen stats post, okay? Bosa led the 49ers pass rush yesterday with 9 pressures in week 4. That nearly matches his pressure total from the first 3 weeks of the season. Through weeks 1, 2, and 3, Nick Bosa had 10 quarterback pressures. Yesterday, Bosa had 9 quarterback pressures. And that is just a terrible, a god-awful, an inexcusable game plan. Taylor Kyles, nearly all of Jacobs' matchups versus Bosa came in the second half. Do you know that Jacobs, he received help on 3 of the 13 pass sets against Bosa? So Bosa in the second half lined up against Jacobs 13 times. Jacobs was helped 3 out of those 13 times. 10 times during the second half yesterday, Van Pelt thought it was the right thing to do to not help his fourth-string left tackle against one of the best pass rushers in football. That is absurd. It's absurd. It's silly. It's outrageous. Unbelievable. Now, Kyle said Jacobs had a few solid reps when left on an island, but Bosa had 2 near takedowns and a game-sealing strip on 3-step dropbacks. How in the world can your offensive coordinator go into that game knowing how bad the offensive line's been, understanding that you are down to your fourth-string left tackle, and think that it's smart to not help that left tackle? I could not even believe my eyes as it was playing out. I was tweeting during the game, and I tweeted, you can't leave Jacobs one-on-one against Bosa because Bosa almost killed Brissett. The very next series, there's Bosa versus Jacobs, one-on-one, strip sack, game set match. This reminds me of going back before the Jets game when I talked about running the football at the Jets. And for some reason, the Patriots did the exact opposite. We talked about it after the Jets game. And even Van Pelt himself came out and said, yeah, we should have started by running the football and then went to our play action. And I asked a question then, and I'll ask the same question now. How in the world do I know what the Patriots should do more than the offensive coordinator does? That's not a good thing. I should not be saying run against this defense, and then you go into the game and you don't run against that defense, and your offensive coordinator comes out and says we should have run against that defense. And I go in last Friday to the podcast saying one of the things that you have to do is not go one-on-one with Bosa. Even if you had Vidarian Lowe out there, who is your starting left tackle, you do not go one-on-one with Bosa. No way, no how do you do that. And yet, out of 13 pass sets, Jacobs one-on-one with Bosa 10 out of those 13 times. These are easy things, folks. I'm not talking about rocket science here. I'm talking about easy game planning. You're playing against the Niners. Tops on your list if you're an offensive coordinator is do not let Nick Bosa beat us. Awful. NFL 101. Now let's get to the head coach. And I'll get to your super chats in a minute. But I have to get to Gerod Mayo. You were watching this game like I was watching this game early on, right? First series, the Patriots are actually doing a decent job moving the football. And it's a 4th and 3 on the San Francisco 41-yard line. You are double-digit underdogs. You're going into this game as a double-digit underdog. You know that the Niners are going to score some points. Unless you're delusional and you think your defense, which couldn't stop Aaron Rodgers the week before, even though Rodgers was shut down yesterday by the Denver Broncos, your defense wasn't good enough to slow down Aaron Rodgers. You thought somehow, some way, with Kittle, with Debo, with Ayuk, with Trent Williams, with Brock Purdy, you thought somehow, some way your defense was going to what? Limit them under 20 points? Your offense is scoring 13 points a week through the first 3 weeks. And you walk into this game and you start moving the football on your first series. You're a double-digit underdog. You're looking at 4th and 3 from the opponent's 40-yard line, and Gerod Mayo decides to punt the ball. What are we doing? What kind of tone do you set when you decide to punt the ball from your opponent's 45 or 46-yard line? Because, of course, they went out there and did the fakakta, let's try to get them to jump off sides thing. What are we doing? What's the point? Double-digit road underdogs against the NFC team that went to the Super Bowl last year. Your team just played like crap against the Jets. And you walk into this game and you've got a decent drive going. Your offense that can't score points. You're on the opposition's 41-yard line, and you need 3 yards to keep the drive moving, and you punt the football. I talked about this before the season, and this infuriates me. Bill Belichick, when you look back 2012 to 2023, he was one of the most conservative head coaches when it came to 4th down decisions. He was one of the most aggressive head coaches in football before 2012. After 2012, he was one of the most conservative coaches. How many times did we see Bill Belichick decide to punt the football from the 50-yard line down to the opponent's 40, 45-yard line? How many times? It burnt him against Dallas in 2021. It burnt him against Tampa in 2021. It burnt them several times over the past few years with Belichick because he was so conservative. And I said before the season, I hope to God, I pray to the football gods that Gerod Mayo isn't as conservative as Bill Belichick's been since 2012. I hope to God when it's 4th down and short and he's on the plus side of the field that he actually goes for it. And there we are yesterday from the San Francisco 41, first drive of the game, 4th and 3, and you punt the ball. Does that tell your team you want to fight? Does that give your offense any confidence? Does that get the guys going? Do they start believing on that sideline that they have a chance? They know they're double-digit underdogs walking in, and that's what you decide to do. Instead of trying to walk out of the field and punch them in the face and set the tone and say, no, we are going to be here all day long. You think that you're going to run over us. You think this is going to be an easy game. You think our offense can't move the ball down the field and score points. We are going to be here all day long, Kyle Shanahan. We are going to fight in this game. We are going to try what we have to do for every single solitary second of this football game to try to walk away with an upset win on the road. We're going to force you to stop us. We're going to force you to win this game. No. Mayo punts. Ridiculous. Soft. Talk tough, coach soft. Talk tough, coach scared. You coach scared, your team's going to play scared. And Gerod Mayo, first 5 minutes of the game, right off the bat. Right off the bat. Letting everybody know that you're not going to go after it. You're not going to be aggressive. You're not going to try to put it to the Niners. Nope. You're going to punt the football away. And what happens? San Francisco quickly moseys down the field and gets points. Oh, thank God you won the field position war, Gerod. Thank God you punted the ball. Let's win the field position game. That's what's going to win against the Niners yesterday. Playing field position is going to win against San Francisco at San Francisco. How'd it work out? At the end of the half, because I'm not going to stop there. At the end of the half, there's Gerod Mayo. There's about 1:30 left in the first half. Brock Purdy fumbles. San Francisco recovers the fumble. You're in a great situation here. You're getting killed in the first half. You have a chance to give your team some life by calling a timeout and trying to get the ball back with as much time on the clock so you can attempt to score a touchdown. Now, it worked out in the end somewhat because the Patriots did get points thanks to Joey Sly, the kicking guy, who's all buffed and jacked, kicking 60-plus yard field goals like, it's no big deal. So you did get points at the end of the half. But in that situation, San Francisco's a little bit rattled. The quarterback just fumbled. You're in a great situation with field position to call that timeout and try to get the football back with more time on the clock to try to score 6 instead of 3. But you don't call the timeout. You let the clock tick, 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 tick. And you just waste 30 seconds, 35 seconds. The challenge flag in the second half, bad challenge. Bad challenge. What was there on that replay that you thought it was going to get overturned? I thought it was a tough call on the field, but once that call is made, you have to ask yourself, is it worth burning one of our 3 timeouts in the second half on a play like that? I didn't think it was. You can look at the response from this football team, right? Big test for Gerod Mayo. How would they respond after losing to the Jets the way they lost to the Jets? Now, they played with a little bit more energy, but they still just mistake after mistake. We talked about this after the Jets game, the pass rush discipline, right? Losing the edge. Losing the edge because you're going inside, you're getting too deep on the pass rush, you're allowing quarterbacks to escape. Rodgers killed the Patriots by escaping due to bad pass rush discipline. What happens on the very first defensive drive of the game? Keion White loses the edge 2 or 3 times. Every single time he loses the edge, it equals a big play. Every time he does it, it's on a 3rd down, just extending the drive. These are mistakes that we see over and over and over again. That's on the coaches. If you see it against the Jets throughout the whole game, and it's one of your talking points going into that game yesterday, in the first defensive series, you're losing the edge multiple times on 3rd down. That's coaching. Your message is not effectively getting through. And I understand. Again, I get it. I get that we're talking about a rookie head coach. I totally get it. And there's going to be a learning curve. There are going to be bumps. I've been the one saying that since the offseason. There are going to be bumps with this football team and with this coaching staff. But some of this stuff is simple, okay? It's simple. Deciding to not go for it on a 4th down when you're at the opponent's 41-yard line, given what your offense hasn't been able to do through the first 3 weeks, that's a simple decision to me. You're a double-digit underdog on the road. You have to go in that situation. And I'm not going to sit here and just let Gerod Mayo make mistake after mistake and not talk about it. Again, I'm not telling you he needs to be fired after the first month of the season, the first year he's a head coach. But I am certainly going to jump on this podcast and I am going to light his ass up when it's a 4th and 3 from the opponent's 41-yard line and he's punting the football. And I'm going to light him up when his team keeps making the same mistakes. I'm going to light him up when he mishandles the clock at the end of the first half. I'm not going to just let him just walk through and say, hey, he's a first-time head coach, so everything that happens this year, let's just chalk it up to a learning experience. Gerod Mayo himself told us, I am not a repeat offender. He's repeating some of the offenses we've seen as a head coach. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's hit some of these super chats. Then I want to get back to the game. First, Vitalix, $10 super chat. Hear me out. We scored more points against the Niners than the Bills did versus the Ravens. Take that. Jaden Daniels is insane. Have a good show, Nick. Thank you, Vitalix. Jaden Daniels is having a terrific start to his career. And he was one of arguably the most pro-ready quarterbacks in the draft. You could say Bo Nix was just off of experience and how much he played. But Daniels was pro-ready. And I think Washington did a great job of marrying play caller with quarterback. Cliff Kingsbury is a fantastic fit for Daniels. He's running an offense that Daniels is very, very comfortable with. The offensive line for Washington has exceeded expectations through the first month of the season. They have, a legitimate number 1 receiver in Terry McLaurin. So Jaden Daniels has been terrific. He's been terrific. No doubt about that. Thank you, Vitalix. Anthony Bennett jumps in with a $5 super chat. Notice the linemen when they did cut away to them in the second quarter, looking like sad sacks. It's like this team has no fire or fight in them. I mean, it's really difficult. Some of this, and we'll get deeper into the offensive line, okay? Some of it, no doubt, is that the offensive line wasn't great to begin with. Then you've got the injuries, the lack of continuity. Then you have a play caller in Alex Van Pelt who's not helping his offensive line in any significant, tangible way with his play calling. I mean, I'm sure DeMontre Jacobs was hopeful that he could survive yesterday. But I'm also sure he wasn't thrilled that his offensive coordinator left him one-on-one in pass sets 10 out of 13 times. That's a recipe for disaster. That's not helping the offensive line. A coach, his role is to help the offensive line. Van Pelt needs to help his offensive line. And going one-on-one with your 4th-string left tackle is not doing that. It's the opposite. You're hanging out, you're hanging them out to dry. Thank you, Anthony. Anonymous jumps in, $9.99, trying to find something positive. How about Joey Sly's field goal? He's been a beast. How many games would the Patriots have won if they had Sly instead of Ryland last year? 6, 7? At least 6. Imagine if they had a kicker who made kicks. Sly's been awesome. He was awesome yesterday. The special teams overall, they've been really good. Shout out to Jeremy Springer because the special teams have been really good this year. Chris Chapman, $19.99 super chat. Thank you, sir. Great podcast today. Analysis of that awful game. I've got more analysis coming your way, Chris. I just try to get through it. I just try to vent through it and talk through it with all of you because I'm frustrated. I just want Sundays to be fun. The first 2 weeks, they were fun. Competitive games. Team looked like it knew what it was trying to do, at least. The last 2 weeks have been an abomination. And I'm going to shoot it to you straight. When they suck, I'm going to tell you they suck. I'm going to tell you why they suck. When they're good, I'm going to tell you why they're good. in the last 2 weeks, just not nearly good enough. And it's not just the offense. Thank you, Chris, and thanks to everybody else who decided to send a super chat so far today. You can get in as well with your comment, your question. Don't spend any money if you don't want to spend any money, but you can help us if you're not going to send any money via super chat. You can do that a couple of easy ways. Just hit that thumbs up on the YouTube channel. Takes a second to do it. Just mosey on down and click. Always amazes me. Like, there could be 1,000 people that watch the podcast and I get like 300 likes, which is great. And I appreciate every single one of you who like the channel as they watch. But can we get more likes if we got 1,000 people, 1,500 people watching a podcast? Let's try to get those likes up. That's the algorithm. That's how we do it. I wish I didn't have to sit here and ask you for it, but that's the way this works. So don't forget to like. Don't forget to throw a comment in. And if you enjoy what we do, subscribe to the channel as well. All right, let's get back. On Friday, I talked about the Niners not blitzing a lot. Their blitz rate was under 15% through the first 3 weeks of the season. However, I did say during Friday's podcast, that could change on Sunday because the Jets, we talked about the Jets not blitzing a lot going into that Thursday night game. The Jets decided to blitz a lot more than they had before the Patriots game, during the Patriots game. The same exact thing happened yesterday. The Niners don't blitz. About 14% blitz rate going into the game. They blitzed more than 1/3 of that game through the first at least 3 quarters. There's about 5 minutes left in the third quarter, and the Niners had a 35% blitz rate. So the Niners did exactly what the Jets did. They said to themselves, we don't blitz. We're not a blitzing defense. But this offensive line, these guys, they can't handle it. So we're going to blitz. We're going to blitz a lot. And that's what they did. And they were successful at doing it. 7 sacks, 10 quarterback hits to Jacoby Brissett. Brissett was under pressure. This is from Doug Kyde of the Herald. Brissett was under pressure on 19 of his 40 dropbacks. Patriots offensive line allowed 21 total pressures. Trey Jacobs, that poor soul, 4th string left tackle, 7 pressures. Layden Robinson, rookie right guard, who has struggled in pass protection, gave up 7 pressures. Sidy Sow was back, first time, playing a game that matters this year. Got off to a tough start. He gave up 4 pressures, somewhat expected. Michael Wenu gave up 3 pressures. Nick Leverett gave up 0. So shout out to Nick Leverett, who had to replace David Andrews during the game. He did not give up a single pressure yesterday. So good job by him. Phil Perry, according to Next Gen Stats, Brissett was under pressure over half of his dropbacks. Here are the numbers, okay? Here's the pressure rate the first 4 weeks of this season. 48.3% pressure rate week 1. Week 2, it actually dropped down to 40.6. The last 2 weeks against the Jets, the pressure rate was 56.5%. That number is outrageous. And yesterday, the pressure rate was 53.8%. Your offense is not going to be able to consistently move the ball and score points if your offensive line is giving up pressure rates above 40%. The Patriots the last 2 weeks, over 50%. It's just not sustainable. And the Niners knew it. And the Niners knew that the Patriots had backup offensive linemen walking into that game yesterday, especially Jacobs at left tackle. And they attacked. And they blitzed and blitzed and blitzed and blitzed. And then they moved Bosa from one side to the other in the second half and got him matched up against Jacobs one-on-one 13 times. Well, 10 times out of the 13 dropbacks. Outcoached. Alex Van Pelt got his ass handed to him yesterday. And if that wasn't bad enough with the line, you lost Caden Wallace during the game. You lost David Andrews after the first series. Wallace yesterday was seen with a boot on and walking with crutches. And let me ask you, riddle me this. You are an offensive coordinator. You go into the game with your offensive line that's had trouble, now even thinner, now even less talent up front. What would you do? What I would do is I would make sure I'd have a running back in the backfield. I'd make sure I'd have a tight end back there. I'd be chipping pass rushers. I'd be giving the offensive line help. There's Jacoby Brissett in empty sets. Empty sets offensively. Why would you ever go empty? I know you try to spread the defense out, but you don't have enough time. Let's talk about Jacoby Brissett. Before I get to that, Terry jumps in with a $49.99 big-time super chat. Thank you, Terry. Nick would have benched Ramondre Stevenson for the fumble. There was talk Bill wouldn't have. For me, not sure. Yeah, I would have sat Ramondre Stevenson. And I know that he's your best offensive player, and I know that makes it tougher on you. But as a head coach, you got to draw the line. And the fact that Ramondre has fumbled every single week, and then last week loses a big fumble against the Jets, he talks about it, you talk about it, I talk about it, everybody talks about it, and he walks in and he fumbles the football in the first half. Yes, I would have sat him down. Now, would I have benched him for the entire game? I'm not sure, but I certainly would have benched him more than like 3 snaps. And they kept him out there for the most part. I would have benched him. At some point, there has to be consequences to your mistakes. As important as you are to the football team, you've got to pick a lane. And to me, Gerod Mayo playing Ramondre yesterday after that fumble and not sitting him for at least a quarter or two, at least, if not sitting him for the rest of the game, that was trying to win the football game instead of trying to make a bigger picture point to the rest of the team. So there's a balance. This wasn't like Pop Douglas last year, who fumbled because Chubb made a great play from Miami and chased him down and punched the ball out from behind. This was Stevenson, again, being careless with the football. And if it wasn't for lucky bounces, Stevenson would have 4 or 5 fumbles lost this year. At some point, you got to say enough is enough and play Antonio Gibson and JaMychal Hasty. And the play call in that situation, by the way, Terry, wasn't much better. The play call, I believe, was asking City So to pull. The guy hasn't played a game that matters yet, and you're asking him to pull across the offensive line and make a play. So it wasn't a great play call by Van Pelt, but you can't fumble the ball. No matter what the play call is, you can't fumble the ball. And at some point, you do have to make a decision if you're Mayo. Hey, man, we love you, Ramondre, and you are the best offensive player on this team right now, but you got to learn from your mistakes. There's got to be consequences to you not taking care of the football. I mean, enough is enough. And so, yeah, I do think Mayo should have drawn the line yesterday and should have sat Ramondre. I would have sat him the rest of the game. It didn't really matter, did it? You put him back out there, you still lost by 17. So I would have sat him and said, we'll get him back next week. We'll get him against we'll get him against Miami. Thank you, Terry, for the very, very generous super chat. I appreciate your support as always. All right, let's get to Jacoby Brissett. Can't believe we're 30-plus minutes into this podcast, and we're just getting to Jacoby. That tells you how many problems there were yesterday. Jacoby Brissett, inexcusable interception. I tweeted this out. It went viral. I took a video, end zone shot, behind Jacoby of the pick six. Now, Fred Warner makes a great individual play by leaping and snaring that football in the air, coming down with it, and returning it for a pick six. Fred Warner is the best linebacker in football. Tip of the cap for just an outrageous individual athletic play. However, it shouldn't have happened. It should not have happened. Number one, Jalen Polk is wide open going across the field. Now, Warner did bump Polk off his initial route. And I know that Olsen said, well, Polk, he's got to get deeper. He was still wide open. He's still wide open on that play. And Brissett doesn't throw it to him. Not only is Polk wide open, but beyond Polk, on the third level, is Pop Douglas. And Pop Douglas is starting to get open as Brissett just starts to throw the football. Now, the Pop Douglas play would have been more difficult because you have to throw him open. But Brissett has a problem. Brissett is a little bit slow in developing at times, if not most of the time. So instead of being aggressive and going downfield and throwing Pop open, it's like he has to wait to see if Pop's going to get open. Doesn't have the trust in himself and Pop, whatever. So he had two guys open. Jalen Polk was wide open. Pop Douglas was open. Jacoby, instead of throwing to one of those two guys, ends up looking towards Tyquan Thornton, and he's staring down the receiver. So, yes, it was a great individual play by Warner to come up with the interception. But Brissett is staring the guy down and then doesn't make a good throw. If Brissett just hits Polk, who's wide open going across the field, it's a first down. It's probably a chunk play. If he hits Douglas down deeper, it's a chunk play. And who knows what happens. And by the way, Gerod Mayo agrees with me because he went on the radio this morning with Greg Hill, and he said they asked him what he saw on that pick six, and he said he had a couple of guys open. It was a bad decision, bad throw. And Jacoby, up until then, he'd taken care of the football. At least you could say that, right? But throws a pick six yesterday when he has two guys open, one guy wide open. I also thought that Jacoby took at least two, if not three, bad sacks yesterday. You know, not all of the sacks are on the offensive line. I thought Jacoby held the football a little too long on 2 or 3 occasions, and he took bad sacks. Get rid of the football. Now, I'm not saying when there's a snap and the offensive line is just a disaster, and within 2 seconds, Jacoby's getting drilled. I'm talking about the plays when there's actually a pocket there, and it happened. It happened a few times. And on that pick six, by the way, Jacoby had a clean pocket. So when you've got a clean pocket, nobody gets open. Your internal clock has to go off. Throw the football. Throw the football away. Throw it in the dirt. Get rid of it. And 2 or 3 times yesterday, Brissett took sacks when he didn't need to. That hurts the offense. And he's just late on throws. He's late on throws. And the last 2 weeks, he has not been good. You know, the first 2 weeks, Brissett played well enough. He did enough. And it wasn't just because of the final score, but it was the way that he played, the plays that he took for the most part. He wasn't running himself into bad sacks, especially week 1 against Cincinnati. He had those scrambles that resulted in gains. Last 2 weeks, Jacoby has started to fall off a cliff. Brian Barrett at The Ringer, he posted, Jacoby Brissett ranks 26th out of 27 quarterbacks in EPA per play over the last 2 weeks, minimum of 50 plays. The only quarterback that has ranked worse in EPA per play the last 2 weeks has been Deshaun Watson. So Brissett the last 2 weeks is not helping this football team. He's just not helping them. Let's get to another super chat. Kyle Kirk didn't think the AVP hire would be so bad. Common sense provides better play calling. AVP has no idea what he's doing. It's been rough. It's been really rough. And you hope that it gets better. If it doesn't get better, I don't know if you change anything during the season. The Patriots do have Ben McAdoo on the staff. Ben McAdoo has been a play caller. Ben McAdoo actually was a pretty damn good play caller before he became a head coach, and then he fell off of a cliff. But Ben McAdoo, just a play caller, actually pretty productive. Productive in New York and even productive in Carolina when he took over there. So I don't know if they would do it in the middle of the season. Van Pelt is, has a relationship with Elliott Wolf. I don't know if they'd feel comfortable, but it can't keep going the way it's gone. Van Pelt has been completely outclassed the last 2 weeks. And if it continues, you're just setting yourself up to fail over and over and over again. It's been bad, Kyle. It's been bad. And that's why I said all off season long with these coaches, we don't know what they're going to do. I give him the benefit of the doubt because, the last time he called plays was back in 2009 with the Buffalo Bills, and that was a crazy situation and a bad roster. Give him the benefit of the doubt. But if he stinks, he stinks. And the last 2 weeks, he has stunk. Have to be better. Have to be better. The offensive coordinator has to do more. And it's not just the offense, by the way. The defense. The defense was an issue yesterday, right? You had the miscommunication. Del Pettis comes in for Kyle Duggar. Miscommunication. Nobody covers Debo. Marcus Jones thinks, oh, crap, I got to go jump on Debo. Then there's confusion because that means George Kittle's going to beat them to the corner of the end zone. So they're all discombobulated. And then it's like the lollipop guild in the end zone because nobody over 5'10" is back there to challenge George Kittle, and Kittle's a monster and just literally just jumps up over every Patriot defender, all three of them, and comes down with a touchdown. And the lollipop guild is just kind of whoop, lollipop guild. Guess we weren't able to get that one. And so you got miscommunication. You got Pettis, he's not going for the ball. He's going for Kittle himself. He didn't make a play on the ball, even though it was right in front of him. DeMarcus Covington, for some reason, he keeps dropping Jelani Tavai into coverage. I don't know why. They got burnt 2 or 3 times yesterday because you got Tavai dropping in coverage. They've dropped Keon White in coverage. They've gotten burnt for doing that. How many times are you going to get burnt from dropping one of your front 7 into coverage? How many freaking times? Again, coaching. You have to put your players in a position to succeed. The fact that they can't contain the edge, that's on DeMarcus Covington. He coached the defensive line. So why is there just no discipline on the edge this year? And it goes back to Covington saying we're going to be more aggressive and all this and that during the offseason. You can be aggressive without totally losing your discipline. So that's on Covington. The defense allowed pass plays of 53, 34, 38, and 32 yards, according to my buddy Greg Bedard. Purdy averaged nearly 20 yards per completion. We talked about this on Friday. People disrespect Brock Purdy. I said on Friday, this is not a dink-dunk offense. We went through all the analytical numbers. And I said on Friday, and I say it again today after you watched him yesterday, Brock Purdy ain't dink and dunk. People think he's dink and dunk. He ain't dink and dunk. And he's been one of the best quarterbacks in football this year without a healthy team around him. And those 4 or 5 big plays just killed you. Killed you yesterday. Not good enough. All right, let's get into some silver linings, and then I want to look at some bigger picture issues before I wrap it up. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Spotify, Apple Pods, folks, rate and review. I will give you a couple of silver linings here just to break up the rip session. Christian Gonzalez continues to be really good. And I know there's some analytics of Pro Football Focus. It has to do with coverage and what teams are calling. And is Christian Gonzalez getting beat? No. He has played some of the best receivers in football through this first month, and he has been really good. Against Brandon Ayuk yesterday, he only gave up 1 catch for 10 yards. So when Gonzalez was lined up across Ayuk, he shut him down. And the 1 catch, by the way, was that really difficult diving catch where Ayuk pretty much plucked it off the ground. So I wouldn't even sit there and criticize the coverage from Gonzalez, just like I wouldn't criticize his coverage against Garrett Wilson on Thursday night for that touchdown. That was just a ridiculous off-platform throw by Aaron Rodgers. Gonzalez has been excellent. Also, Keon White, yes, very difficult first series. He didn't have discipline on the edge. He single-handedly allowed that drive to continue. But he had 7 quarterback pressures yesterday. 7. And he had to run stuff. So, yeah, early in the game, that first series was a rough one for Keon White. But the rest of the way, he played pretty damn good. And he keeps getting after the quarterback. He is the only guy that is consistently getting pressure on this football team. So shout out to Keon White. Special teams. I know. Yep. But I'm going to say it. Special teams. When your kicker makes what, a 63-yard field goal, a 54-yard field goal. Joey Sly has been excellent this year, and he deserves to be on the list of silver linings. So great job by Joey Sly. He's been excellent. I thought Behringer was really good. I thought the kick coverage and the punt returns by Marcus Jones were really good. They again caused another turnover on a kickoff to start the second half. Gave him a chance, made it a 10-point game at the beginning of the second half. So I thought their special teams was excellent. Great job by Jeremy Springer, first-time coordinator, and he's doing a bang-up job with special teams. I got no problem with the special teams with the Patriots. Zero problem. So great job by Springer and company to get the most out of their special teams. If special teams wasn't as good as it was yesterday, that game is, 30-0? A bleep show. Absolute bleep show. And I also thought Jalen Polk was good yesterday. The back shoulder catch. He had another catch. He came back, made a nice play. The catch down the sideline, he caught it, but his second foot happened to drop on the top of a Niner. I mean, if that 49ers leg is not there, Jalen Polk might have that ridiculous downfield catch that was thrown into double coverage. So I thought Jalen Polk, again, on that pick six, Polk is wide open. Brissett hits Polk there. It's a big play. So I thought Jalen Polk had a pretty good game yesterday, especially considering the offense, quarterback, the O-line. I thought Jalen Polk played pretty well. So those are your silver linings. Gonzalez, White, special teams, Jalen Polk. Now let's close things out with the bigger issues. Offensive line health. Again, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that the offensive line was going to be great, but what I can tell you is that the offensive line has not been healthy all year long. And it's made it very difficult to find any continuity, to find their best five. We're talking about an absolute mash unit. And yes, teams go through injuries. Last year's team went through injuries that impacted the offensive line play early on. But we are talking about trauma to this offensive line. And it's been the entire season. You go back to the camp. Their offensive line that they wanted, they had 10 or 11 practices consecutively with this offensive line. Vidarian Lowe, Sidi So, Andrews, Owenu, Chukwuekorfor. That was your starting offensive line. That was what the Patriots wanted to do. Again, I'm not telling you it would have been great. I'm not telling you it would have been terrible. I'm telling you we don't know what it would have been because we never got to see those five guys play together. Chooks left, mental health. He's out the door. Owenu has had to slide to right tackle instead of right guard, which is where they were going to put him. Once they got into camp and they saw everybody, they were practicing with pads. Owenu was right guard. Chooks was right tackle. Chooks is gone. And then you've got Owenu, right guard, instead of, right tackle. He has to slide out to right tackle. Andrews, I don't think, has been healthy since like week 2. He was questionable with a hip going back a couple of weeks ago. He was not the same guy against the Jets. And then yesterday, he has a shoulder injury. So Andrews is out. Sidi So finally got to play a football game yesterday. And then Vidarian Lowe, he's played like 160 snaps or whatever it is. He hasn't been able to stay healthy. I mean, by the end of yesterday's game, this is what you had on the offensive line. Your fourth string left tackle, your starting left guard, finally, your second string center, so your backup center, who is technically your third string center because you were planning on Jake Andrews to be your backup center, and then Andrews got hurt before training camp took a hold, and so Andrews was gone. So Leverett, who was really your third string center, is now your backup center. And you had your backup right guard because Owenu was playing right tackle. So now you got Layden Robinson at right guard. And you had your backup right tackle. Fourth string left tackle, starting left guard, and then backup center, backup right guard, backup right tackle. And I'm telling you right now, it's not to say, I got to say it again for some people. Context matters. I'm not telling you the offensive line would have been good, great. I can't tell you what it would have been. But what I can tell you is offensive line play across the league is not good. Tackle play is very difficult to come by. And when you have one of your starting guys in the spot that he was going to start, Sidney So at left guard, and the rest of your offensive line is guys that have shuffled to different spots or dudes who were picked up right before the season kicked off to be put on the practice squad, that's a problem. And I frankly don't know how many teams would get at least okay offensive line play given that you have a bunch of backups or guys that are moving all sorts of different spots. On top of that, you got a quarterback who holds onto the football too long, and you've got an offensive coordinator who's not helping his offensive line with certain play calls. That's the perfect storm. That's how you get a disaster. So the offensive line health, I don't think it's going to get better. I mean, how can you have any confidence in that? Andrews, who knows what's going to go on with him, and Wallace goes out. He's got crutches and a boot now. So the guy you drafted is now hurt. Who knows how long he's going to be lost? Brissett is who he is. He's not going to get any better. Hopefully he doesn't get any worse. And the injuries on the defense are stacking up. Jawan Bentley, that injury has hurt this football team. Duggar got hurt yesterday, had to get carted off. So, he took a little ride to the back of the locker room. So is Duggar going to be out now long term? We don't know. If so, you got Del Pettis back there, Jalen Hawkins, Peppers is going to have to play even better. The biggest issue, though, is the coaching. The biggest issue is the coaching. And the mistakes are not being corrected. And that's on both sides of the football. Jeremy Springer, again, I'm going to leave out of this conversation. Shout out to him. Special teams has been great. Van Pelt looks lost. Covington at times looks lost. Mayo has not been good enough, not nearly good enough. Really starting I'd say halftime of that Seattle game, right before halftime when they screwed up the clock situation. Coaching's not good enough. I understand the learning curve, but we're talking simple stuff here. Not good enough. You can't have a team committing the same mistakes over and over and over and over and over again, especially all of this that we talked about after a mini bye. You had extra time to figure things out, and you still had guys making the same mistakes yesterday. Can't happen. All right. Autopsy done. Don't forget to like. Don't forget to comment. Don't forget to subscribe. On Wednesday, we're going to go through the first quarter of the season. We're going to evaluate what's been done, what hasn't been done. Go through that before we get to our game preview on Friday. So back on Wednesday at 3 o'clock Eastern. Thanks to everybody checking us out for the first time. If you like the alternative, if you like what we do, make sure you subscribe. Trying to hit 4,500 subscribers. We're creeping closer to that by the day because of all of you. So like, comment, subscribe, Spotify, Apple Pods, rate, and review. Thank you for joining us on a rough Monday. Back Wednesday at 3. Till then, it's the Nick Cattle Show.